Welcome to the Startup Lowdown, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the real stories behind building a successful business. I'm Kase Dean, here to bring you an honest look at the ups, downs, and unexpected turns that come with growing something from the ground up. In this podcast, we focus on the human side of business, the tough decisions, the resilience, and the values that drive purpose-driven leaders. Join us as we dive into the personal journeys of inspiring business owners who are committed to making a real impact. Let's get into today's conversation. Today, my guest is Aaron Ryan. Now, Aaron Ryan, first of all, before I get into it, because there's a lot here to cover, thank you so much, Aaron, for being on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, I mean, I'm doing fine, but then when you add coffee into the mix, I'm doing really well.
What
So
time
there
is
you
it
go.
where you are?
It is 9:35 a.m. Pacific time.
Okay, so I've got 5:30 here in the UK. Okay, so Aaron is an award-winning best-selling author based in Washington, where he lives with his wife, two sons, and a lively mix of pets. There's Macy the dog, there's Winston the cat, and then there's Mary and Pippin, who are his beloved finches. Known for his gripping Dissonance sci-fi saga and the sci-fi thriller Forecast, Aaron has captivated readers with his imaginative storytelling. His work also includes The Omega Room, a suspense novel, and numerous business guides, including how to successfully self-publish and promote your self-published book, and The Superhero Anomaly. Writing under his former stage name Joshua Alexander, Aaron also authored several influential books on the voiceover industry. So Aaron is a lifelong storyteller, and he brings passion and depth to each project, whether that's writing fiction or guiding fellow creatives on their publishing journey. Aaron, this is a hell of a lot, and a lot more than I expected. When I was going through it and preparing today, part of me wanted to, no offense to you, part of me wanted to kind of take it and say, okay, how do we trim this? But then, true to who I am, I was like, no, you're going to have to find a way to chew on all of this and accept that somebody has managed to allow their brain to do a bunch of stuff and actually made it work, which I think is pretty amazing, because people can have a load of ideas, start some, not finish some, procrastinate about some, but and to be honest, going through what you sent through originally, your application to be on the show, there's a bunch of other stuff as well. I think I want to start with, who were you and what was going on before all of this started?
Yes. Well, if this includes voiceovers, or if it doesn't, I mean, there's two different
Yes,
directions there
yes,
because there's
yes. Everything before, because all of
correct.
this is kind of connected and you're going to connect the dots, but
Yep.
you are an enterprise, right? So some
Correct.
people can create a service which is kind of separate to them, but you are the enterprise. So I suppose when you take into account author and the voiceover, which again is you, it's
hmm
your voice, it's your energy. When you take into account all of that enterprise, what was happening before all of that started?
Yeah. Oh no, I love the question. So, and as for the right now, there's two different story tracks or career tracks that actually are both storyteller related. So I
Okay,
tell other people's stories as a voiceover artist, and I tell
okay.
my own as a novelist. And I love that there are parallel tracks that way. Much prefer the authoring, by the way. But I will never forget. I mean, going back to 2007, as a kid growing up, I wrote stories. As a kid growing up, I created music. I did, jingles and things like that, and experimented with the creative arts, acting, performance, whatever. But I will never forget in 2007, I was bouncing around between several different jobs, and all of them, every single one, you're working for someone else's dream.
Now
That
tell me what
always,
those jobs were.
oh, God, there's too many to list. They're all admin jobs.
I've done
So,
the same thing, man. At one stage
yeah.
in my career, it was like I counted and I had a I did a kind of calculation. I'm not good with maths or anything, but I did a kind of rough calculation, and it's something like a job per year for
Oh,
like a
I've got
10
you
year
beat.
period.
I had 14 jobs in a 3-year period. 14 different jobs I bounced around.
Interesting.
And that's the thing is just as a sole proprietor, as an entrepreneur who desperately wants to do their own thing, it's soul crushing. I
Right.
mean, to be able to keep that up is one thing, but to have to keep that up is another thing. To work under the auspices of someone else's dreams, it's their name on it, it's their goals and aspirations and all that, and you're just you're a pawn in that chessboard. Um, I got tired of it, and I think I was pushed over the edge. In the winter of 2007, I believe is what it was. My boss was a very, very mistrustful man, suspicious man. And so I couldn't make it into work one morning. My car was not starting. I don't know why. It was cold and iced over everywhere. I had probably 30 miles to go to get to work, maybe less. I don't remember. But he called me, and I didn't answer. I didn't get the phone because it was before cell phones, I believe, or before iPhones. And his call went straight to voicemail. But what I didn't know is at my place of employment, his company, everything was crashing. Computers were crashing. There was no internet. All kinds of just a chaos enveloped the place. It was a comedy of errors that was happening. I had nothing to do with it, but his voicemail said that I did. His voicemail was very indicting, and like, he listen, if you're effing with my company from remotely, and if you're doing all
Oh
this,
wow.
you're not going to get your last paycheck, and you're fired. I remember listening to that voicemail when I went back up to my apartment, listened to it, and went, I mean, looked at my phone and went, I'll never again will I work for someone again. So that pretty much clinched the deal for me.
What was it? What was it that? Because that sounds like a serious. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. But can you can you articulate what that feeling was? Because I could interpret it as how dare you speak to me, but it seems a lot more than that.
Powerlessness. Yeah, I was very powerless. He held all of the keys, he held all of the control, and essentially blamed me for whatever mayhem was taking over his office, which I had nothing to do with. And here he's going to withhold my last paycheck and
Right,
fire me.
right,
I mean,
right.
very non-veiled threats sent over voicemail, and so just a feeling of powerlessness consumed me, and a resolve that I'll never be in this position ever again, working for someone else's dream and being in such a position of frailty.
So I'm gonna jump a gap for a moment, and I want to find out what was the first self-owned venture that you went after.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was not by any stretch a serious contender in the graphic design field. I knew what I knew, but I was actually using Microsoft Photo Draw. I know, boo hiss. It's such an old software, like discontinued in 2000, but it's
You
what
gotta
I knew.
respect the elders, man.
Hey, it's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? I loved that software. In fact, I still have it, but I weaned myself off of it. So I got into graphic design. I got into basic video production, so it was multimedia once you join forces with those two things. And I knew what I knew. I figured I would learn as I went, and so I jumped out and I formed a company called Istari Media. Istari is Elvish for the wizards from the Lord of the Rings. And so Istari Media was my very first company creating multimedia. That's what I did.
That's amazing. Now let's go back. You've decided you're no longer gonna work for somebody else, let alone this a-hole, and then days are going past. What was the process that you went through, thinking, talking, scheming, planning? What was the process, if you can remember, you went through that eventually led to Astari Media being born?
Well, I would say that it's fair to say that it all happened in a reflex. Now, my dad always cautioned me, never quit a job until you have your replacement job. It's good sound advice. I absolutely respect it. I completely flew in the face of that advice and said, no, sorry, I'm out of here. And so I just basically started my own company right away. And I reached
Okay,
out to friends and family. I posted ads on Craigslist. At the time, they were free in the services category. And so I was posting what I did. I whipped up some graphics because I'm a graphic designer. So I whipped up some graphics to say what I could do. And by that time, I had already kind of on the side done a little bit of graphic design for a few family and friend
Okay.
clients. So I had a little bit of a portfolio and resume to work with. But yeah, it was the lemming jumping off the cliff for sure. It was there, but for the grace of God go I, and only fools tread. That's where I went.
But
But I
that
had
feeling
to.
of powerless, that feeling of powerlessness that you had, and can I say frustration, anger? Well,
Yeah, all
yeah.
of it.
And it really propelled you because there was no gap. There was no sitting down, woe be me. There was
Yeah,
no, let me take a moment to think about it and just compose myself. It seemed like you're like, this, I can't go back, right?
I made it
I have to
impossible to do
I
so.
have to replace this
Yeah,
situation because
I pretty much
this
made it
guy's in
impossible
this
to do
guy's
so.
in danger if I end up going back.
Yeah, put the scissors away. No, I did make it impossible for me to do so. But see, I was in a position of powerlessness, so I took on a mantle of power and decided, I'm going to rise and fall by my own merits. I'm going to no longer be dependent on anybody else for a paycheck. I know what I can do, and if I don't do this, I'll regret it severely in 10 years, 5 years, 1 year.
Right.
So I jumped. I took that leap of faith and I jumped and I just started to do everything that I could do in the craft, world, in the sense of the craft, but then also started marketing the snot out of it
Right.
because now I was dependent on me only. And that urgency and fervor and tension of having to create my own paycheck, that's what drove me.
What were your dependencies as far as financial commitments were at that time? Was it just you? Did you have rent to pay? Or was
Just
it
me and
just for
rent.
you to have money? Yeah. So you had your own
Well,
place and,
just me and rent and debt.
yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, but I had my own place. I was in my own apartment. I had some savings, and this and that, and I had a check coming. But I was fortunate to be able to land some clients that were in close proximity fairly early on, and just kind of hit the ground running.
So this is graphic design. Take me through it as we're now moving towards voiceover work and becoming an author. How is this happening? Because I'm not yet connecting the dots. Connect these dots for me.
I don't know if
Obviously,
you
you're the
can.
common denominator in all of this, but how was this
I am
happening?
I am the common denominator. These are not easily connectable dots. This is why I published a book called The Superhero Anomaly.
Right.
And I do tend to look at myself a little bit as an anomaly in that regard, and many people in my
Respect.
in my circle and orbit do. I'm okay with that. An anomaly is somebody who defies the norms and the standards of operation and everything that you expect. An anomaly works, paints outside the lines. An anomaly jumps the tracks and does their own thing, and that's what most entrepreneurs are. But an anomaly can just defy the odds and do a whole bunch of stuff. So I am a creative. So if you want to put all that under an umbrella, it's under the umbrella of someone who's incredibly creative and needs to create. I have an insatiable desire to create. So working as an admin or a dispatcher or an executive assistant or any of those roles that I had, those were all non-creative.
For sure.
Some of them actually allowed me to create, a little bit here and there, but it wasn't, in and of itself a creative job. So I knew that I could do graphic design on a base level. I knew I could do video production on a base level. I could definitely do art. I could definitely create music. I could definitely write stories and creative writing and all of that stuff. So all of those things eventually found their way into the careers that they belong in. It's kind of like the the round peg finding its round hole and the square peg finding its square hole. And I didn't quite know, I think, what some of those careers were called, I think, at the time. But it was such a thrilling journey of discovery going, oh, well, if I can do this with my voice, then a voiceover artist does that. I'll be a voiceover artist.
It was that
And
simple in your mind?
yeah, it really was. It really was. But
So did
authoring is
voice
something that I did since second
did the
grade, so
voice
it came very naturally.
yeah, so you've always been writing books, but as far as making money is concerned, you added the voiceover as another stream of income. Is that what happened?
I did, but it eventually took over everything else. So voiceovers were essentially something that I stumbled into as a telemarketer. See, I did telemarketing. I mean, I did everything. I did the
Same here.
paperboy route. Didn't everybody? Um, it was something that I never knew was an actual career. Um, I just never knew that. Now you look at somebody like Stephen King, he's a writer. So you know that a person can be a writer, but a voiceover artist, you don't ever see them. They are behind the scenes.
For
You
sure.
hear their voice, but it never occurred to me that it could be a career.
I can tell you something that's come to mind just now. The main voiceover thing for my growing up, which I then realized stopped because maybe they just wanted to save money. I don't know. Was that every movie trailer came with a voiceover at one point, right? But then it
Yeah, Don
stopped, and it was
LaFontaine.
just, is that who it is? I was just
Yeah,
wondering whether or not you're about to drop a name somewhere.
that's the guy who's, in a world where blah blah blah. That's Don
Yeah.
LaFontaine. Yep.
Okay. And then at
God
some
rest his
point, it
soul.
just became clips of the film that you're about to see, to the point that
Yes.
some of us, it's annoying because what's the point of me now paying for a ticket? I'm pretty sure I know the whole story. Thank you very much. But at a
Yeah.
point, that voice, the power, the energy, the atmosphere behind that voice was, along with the visuals, the selling point for going to watch a movie for me growing up.
Yeah. Yes, it's definitely evolved. Voiceovers themselves as an industry have evolved, and they are under excruciating pressure right now from AI, which we
For
can of course
sure,
talk about
yes.
and other factors. But boy, there's so many subgenres in voiceovers where I draw my bread and butter. Like for example, I'm currently the voice of United Healthcare. So any of the commercials that you see or hear or watch on the web in the states, enrollment ends December 7th. The member ID all-in-one U card. That's all me.
Right.
Very, very fortunate to have landed United Healthcare. That's union work. It's provided us insurance as a result. So it's been great. But man, there's e-learning. There's character and animation for cartoons, of course. There's IVR, which is phone trees. You call for Bob, press two. For Jim,
Mm.
press one. There's explainer videos. There's documentaries. Narration. There's a whole bunch of categories, and I do best with commercial and e-learning. Those are mine.
So when you first started this and you had the idea to do it, what was the process you went through and what was your first job that you got?
I'll never forget my first job. That's the one I wouldn't say I'm most grateful for it now, but boy, it showed me I can really do this. I remember saying, son of a gun, I think I said gun, son of a gun, this actually works. And it was $800 or something like that. It was a job for Virtual Field Trips Limited, narrating an online course, basically, I'm pretty sure was about Italy. And so, welcome, ciao amico,
Oh,
welcome to
really?
Italy. Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I
and I would
read
do it
about
in the
all of the
accent.
accent stuff, but you actually, so, okay, so you're multi-talented within the voiceover. It's not just your voice and whatever you're doing to tweak that. You've actually used accents in there as well.
As a Native American, North American, white bread, vanilla, nothing exciting about me, voiceover artist. I've beaten out native Brits for British voiceover roles. I
Mad.
mean, like, I love doing a British accent. I love doing impersonations of David Attenborough and Sam Elliott, and he's not British. But yeah, I mean, all kinds of different accents. I've done Australian, and it's a hoot. I love doing them. But my narrow lane, the lane I'm most familiar with is commercial and e-learning.
So how much time does this take up within your work week, the voiceover work that you're doing now? Is it something?
I'm in and out of
Yeah,
there all
so
day long.
really, yeah.
Yep. It's auditions or it's jobs, but this is the beauty of having a dual storyteller career that run, fairly parallel to each other. When I'm not telling someone else's stories, either in an audition, which is an unawarded job, or an awarded job, when I'm not telling those stories, I come back here and I'm telling my own stories. I'm authoring stories. So I get a whole bunch done, and then a really good, mortgage paying audition comes in. Hold. I bounce in there. I record it, come back, edit it, send it. Okay, good. They're good. Now I get back to writing again. So it really is kind of a doctor with a pager, very reactive type of seesaw throughout the day. I love it though. It works for me, not for everybody, but I love that the demands that come in, and as inspiration hits to write, you just always write. But as inspiration hits with a mortgage paying job, you comply and you send that audition, or you record the job as it's awarded.
So as I said at the start, you're married with two children. Along this timeline we're talking about, where does your wife come into play? Getting married, when is this happening? At which point is this happening along your career?
It was such a dream. No, um,
I'm
it
gonna
really
cu- I'm gonna
was.
cu- I'm gonna come back to that romantic bit, man. Trust me, I'm a romantic at
Yeah,
heart. So I've got
no, that's cool.
you're in great company, man.
It's really funny that, I mean, this question actually conjures up a memory, that when I was proposing to my wife, I made a video. We did it publicly. We had hundreds of people there at a performance. I did it at the tail end of the performance, and in the video, I said something to the effect of, business has been kind of an addiction for me, and she is the cure. And I remember saying it very dramatically like that, and she's like, oh, we're filming her and she's watching it in the audience, but really, if not for my wife and kids, I would be sitting here all the time.
Interesting.
So I do treat my company, and it's a couple of companies under one LLC. I do treat all of those and all those DBAs as a 9 to 5 job. Now, if I'm busy with the kids, busy with the wife in the off hours, and all of a sudden I get a reread request from my agent or one of my agents, or there's a big mortgage paying job or union work coming in, I'm gonna, honey, can I go out to the studio real quick and do this? And she's very gracious, like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. I'll take 5 minutes, come out here, do it, send it, come back. Sometimes you have to deal with those interruptions.
Has from having getting married, having children, when did you feel, or did you feel any friction? So you've got the family, like you're saying. It seems like you got to a point where it was working out, but where did you feel that friction at the beginning
Yeah.
where you're trying to work it out? Because having a passion, which is clear you do have, right? If you don't create, something's going to be off. And everybody who's dear to you needs to know about this. But I know what my captain's like. At some points, she doesn't care, right? There's got to
Right.
be a balance.
Right.
So when did you first feel this kind of friction where you realized, hold up, I'm gonna have to learn new skills to
Yeah.
make this all work? Because I'm
Well,
I'm not giving up this, and I'm definitely not giving up this.
isn't it all about adapt and overcome always?
Right?
When we had our second child in June 12th of 2019, that's Asher, this one right here, this picture right here. Asher, my wife was just up until the early hours, like the ungodly hours of the morning, 2, 3, 4, whatever, with him nursing. And so she's dead to the world in the morning. She's so tired. And so Asher, a little newborn, would wake up at, 6-ish again for more feeding, bottle or whatever it was. And so I had to adapt my schedule because I'm usually up at that time going into the studio. We didn't live here at the time. I had a different studio, different room, but I would try to get in early in the morning. There's a fresh batch of lots of auditions, and early bird gets the worm.
Right.
And so the earlier you are in the audition lineup, by the way, the better your chances, because if they develop audition fatigue, the people who are reviewing all these, the later you are in the lineup, you're just not going to get listened to. So
Okay.
it's my objective to get in there early. Well, Asher would start waking up, and I'm like, but I. So I had to flex and get up even earlier.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
ever since June of 2019, I've been up virtually every day since at 5 a.m. And I come out here and I do my auditions. But then when he was an infant, a newborn, I would finish my auditions. Yay, they're all done. Now I can get Asher and be ready for him and feed him in the morning. But I've changed that since June of 2019. I've been doing that.
How old are your children?
They're now 8 and 5.
8 and 5. And how has growing the business or maintaining the business plus raising the children, how has that gone? How has that experience been?
It's been wonderful. I mean,
Because
there's
I
been
feel I get the feeling that you're I still find it inspirational. Everybody's got their own baggage, everybody's got their own blessings, but you seem to be quite blessed in the setup that you have, right?
yeah,
Because the way you've just told that story, it's not as if to say it was easy. I don't doubt for a moment it was easy.
was not. No, it was not
But
easy.
how
Well,
have
this is.
you how have you maintained that over time? What has been
I think this is
how
this
do you
is
find it to
national.
be? Yeah.
It's either National Gratitude Month or World Gratitude Month or something like that. I didn't even know that, but
I didn't know
gratitude
that
is a
at all.
hallmark of our homes. Yeah, learn something new every day, right? I was like, oh, but gratitude really is the hallmark of our homes. I am inordinately grateful for the sheer amount of blessings. I mean, you only see this tiny little,
Right.
widescreen sliver of it. We're on 4 acres down here in Olympia, which is the
Okay.
state capital of Washington. I'm so grateful for what God has provided and allowed me to do, and the dreams we've been able to fulfill through voiceovers, through authoring, through creative pursuits. But yes, there are challenges that come up every now and then, especially during the summer when the kids are home. Labor Day last year, I was working. It was a work day. During the work day, they were just getting ready to go to school, like the next week. Asher was playing in the living room. I think he was playing on the Wii. Yes, we still have a Wii, and he fell and cut his ear
Oh
open,
no.
big time, on the coffee table in the living room. So everything shuts down. I mean, we're
Of
going to the
course.
emergency room, all of us. So it's consoling him, it's wrapping him up, it's treating it, and then you know whisking all of us off in the van to the ER. Um, those types of things, and see, honestly, that really is mirrored in my authoring. I'm very much a pantser. There's a plotter who plots everything out. There's a pantser that flies by the seat of their pants. I like to write organically because life does that to you. Life happens out of the blue, and you got to pivot and adapt. And that's been the story of my career life as well. So I'm very familiar with it.
What would you say you learned in your career that helped you with being a father and a husband?
I have several role models of people who are excellent fathers. I mean, I have an ongoing, current, day-to-day role model in my neighbor and best friend, Roland. Roland is the best father I've ever seen. I love him to death, and I just respect him so much for how he parents his kids. I'm told, I'm the world's greatest dad, and I'm told I'm a good father. Everyone tells you that who's close to you in your circle. Your mom tells you that, and the kids tell you, Dad, you're the best dad ever. Did you have other dads? It's just so weird. It's like, okay, I appreciate it, but weird. Um, but I'm humble enough to accept that there's still so much that I need to learn, and there's still so many shortcomings that I have as a dad. I have a dad who I always felt growing up was more my brother's dad. I felt disconnected from him. They were really connected with sports. I wasn't a sports kid. Um, and we finally connected, and I went through a really painful, excruciating process in the early 2000s of just learning and growth. And Dad drew near. Dad came and enveloped me and affirmed me and said, "You're going to get through this," and walked with me through it. And I have a very special kinship and appreciation for my dad, for the love and affirmation and validation that he gave me. So I learned from that as well.
Absolutely beautiful. What would you say your marriage and being a father has helped you? How has it helped you in your business? Did you find anything improve as far as a business owner is concerned, as far as you did your work from being married, from having children? Wasn't there effect in that direction?
Well, my wife is incredibly insightful. I swear, she's got a BA in psychology. She's probably going to go for her master's at some point. She's incredibly insightful, and she always believes that I don't need to be right. I just need to be heard. That's her argument.
That's nice.
And she always says, if I see
That's
some guy,
nice.
yeah, if I see some guy careening out of control on the highways, skimming across lanes and cutting people off and driving like a maniac, there's going to be profanity coming out of this. There's going to be, you idiot, moron, whatever epithet I can come up with, and I get more and more creative as time goes on. But my wife, what comes out of her mouth is, you don't know their story. It could be someone who is desperately racing to get his wife to the hospital to deliver, something like that.
Right.
She just wants people to be heard and people to be understood. That has factored into my writing. There's a character in my Dissonance hexalogy named Pastor Rosie, and while she is a short, septuagenarian, diminutive Mexican woman, a lot of her traits come from my wife.
Right.
There's a psychologist in Forecast who is, in her 60s. She's a Brit. My wife grew up in a British family. She's very insightful and real snippy. And that comes from my wife as well. So a lot of the lessons I've learned from my wife, I've channeled into some of the characters.
So let's move on to the author part of your career and the books. It seems like you've written a lot of books. If I was to take, within the work I do, coaching, consulting, and I take it from just a point of view of just business growth, development, marketing, somebody's never told me for the 16th time, Kase, write a book. In my mind, yeah, maybe I'll try whatever, but it's one book.
Right.
There's no part of me that's thinking it's going to be a series of books. It's like, let's hope this one knocks whatever it is out of the park. In
Right.
your situation, it's been several books. You were always writing when you're growing up. Okay. But then it became something that made money, a business. How did that happen? One. And when that was happening, did you already know it was going to be a series of books that were going to be written?
So the second question first, because it's briefer. Yes, in two cases, I knew that I was going to write a series of voiceover books as a voiceover artist. And yes, I knew I wanted to write at least a trilogy. I think probably, I'll correct that, at most a trilogy of fiction novels with Dissonance. It actually doubled and turned into a hexalogy.
Wow.
There was just so much story to be told. But growing up, writing stories and all that stuff just, I think, was prep time. It was all kind of conditioning me for a career as a writer. Great experience for it. But as a voiceover artist, I was a blogger first, and I published 300 blogs over the course of several years, amassed, I think, a 4,500 or 6,000, something like that, I remember, subscriber base, which is wonderful. And it was very satirical. It was, satire involves a lot of fiction and silliness, and just kind of lighthearted examples to learn from. But that trained me to also be a storyteller. So I took those blogs and the ones that were the best and resonated the most with people, and I incorporated those in some of my voiceover books for those people who, there's a lot of blogs. They're not going to just sift through my site and try to read every single one. But you put them in a book format, you reach a whole new audience. You reach people that want to hold something in their hands and read it
They still
that way.
exist.
They do. And I love curling up by a fire with a blanket and coffee and a book. Those people exist. God bless you. I love you. But then also, Kindle readers as well. I
So
think,
how did you get into the whole, like, okay, so what was it that made you think, I'm going to now create a book of some of the information from my website and make it easier for people? Was it a monetization way of thinking about it? What was it?
no, it really wasn't. I knew that would be a byproduct. So yay. I mean, that's exciting, but it was a secondary consideration. I had a great mentor as a blogger. He was pretty much the penultimate voiceover, quintessential, whatever you want to call him, voiceover blogger named Paul Strickwerda. He's Dutch, voiceover artist and blogger. Everyone followed him. And he had published a book. And so I am really very much of the mindset, why not me?
Right.
I honestly, that resonates with me more times than I care to probably admit. If you, then why not me? And it certainly wasn't out of a desire to one up or upstage him at all. It was just, I could do this as well. And so, here's where it crossed. Here's where different, um, I guess, pursuits and industries crossed. As a musician, I've produced several CDs over the years, and I designed them, and I had them. I didn't produce them audio except for the very last one, but I would design them and I would send off the artwork and they would package and I would hold it in my hand when I was done and go, look at this. You know, whether they sold or not is a different question. But so proud of those finished works. I love
Yeah.
holding the finished work in my hand and going, I made this. I designed this. I wrote all this. I laid it out and look what I did.
So
I
that
did
was
this.
that was a bit that I was wondering about, and this is in the most respectful way to to put it. Is there an addiction within that of
I think so, yeah. I think it's very fair to say.
when you end up with there's a next one because you made okay. I'm going on silly now. I suppose my brain is saying so you're justifying the reason why it's going to be 6 books or 7 books, but in actual fact, I'm addicted to the process. But I totally believe you. There was this massive story you had to get out there, but there's
Yeah.
some part of it which is it's what you do. It's breathing. It's living.
Yeah. It's very natural, but that compulsion to create it is there's always something next to create.
Right.
And I like seeing the end product first. So, I designed this long before the book reached the end, where before I typed the end.
Okay.
I start out with the end goal in sight and then I work up to that. And this may change along the way. It
So
may
hold on.
evolve
Did
as
you
industry
do the
does.
graphics for the book?
So I had someone design the man.
Yeah.
I downloaded and found and created different arcs of lightning. That's a plane that was clip art that I changed. I had someone design the backdrop of the two towers because this wasn't something. Excuse me. This wasn't something that I could just use. It might be an Associated Press image that I can't just
Right.
throw on there.
Right.
It'd be a copyright
Right.
violation. But I did all the layout, the graphics, and the typeset and everything. So yeah,
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely
but
beautiful.
that's the
Okay.
graphic design experience.
Tell me because it's been at the on the tip of my tongue. Tell me what this series is about. This series of books.
Yeah. So Dissonance is a hexalogy of 6 books that is a sci-fi alien invasion post-apocalyptic saga.
Cool.
The shortest way, we'll try to make it super brief. 2026, we're going about our lives. These things drift down out of the sky. They're not crafts or probes or ships or drones. They're beings. They hang there for 90 days, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them all over the planet. We don't
That's
know what
kind of
they are.
scary, man.
Yeah, we're like friend or foe. What is this? But we think maybe they're angelic messengers because they haven't attacked. They're waiting. They're hovering there for 90 days. They haven't attacked us. Maybe they're angelic messengers. Well, they all wake up at the same time on September 3rd, 2026, and they attack. They kill off 85% of mankind within 3 months. We call them Gorgons because, like Medusa the Gorgon, you cannot look them in the eye. You cannot lock eyes with them. They have a telepathic paralytic. They're going to eat you where you stand while you're frozen like this, and you're going to feel every single bite. So the story is about 2 brothers. I don't want to spoil anything, but
Of
something
course.
very big is going on, leads up to a massive counterstrike. We kick them off the planet. But the series is called Dissonance because 16 years after an alien invasion, we're still not getting along. We're still throwing each other under the bus. You would think we would rally together to kick these suckers off the planet. Um, but we're still putting ourselves forward and at the expense of our fellow man. We've got to work together to get rid of this scourge. It's not a referendum on 2024, although there's a lot of similarities.
It's interesting you're saying that, and I think the nerd in me, the geek in me, since I saw the image of you with the books, for me, why did I want you on? Because I'm absolutely fascinated by somebody who I can speak to who's managed to write a series of books on something as vast as what you've just explained, because that's massive. That can go anywhere. But the bit you've just said, which brings it back to something which I'm completely obsessed with, which is the human condition. I love tech, I love automation and all the rest of it. But the human condition, why do we, how can we, all that kind of stuff. But I remember being really young. I used to love watching Star Trek and whatever, and coming to this conclusion. I've never told anybody this, and definitely not in this way. I came to the conclusion that the only way we were going to be united is if we were invaded by an extraterrestrial force. That is what came. That's why I'm saying that. That's what came to my mind. And then, of course, even if I want to take into account the alien Superman and Lex Luthor, and then we had so many stories of, damn it, there's always this capitalist a-hole who's gonna make a deal and sell us off or work with them and rest of it. But I was so, and it was, I think about that time when you're young and you're starting, so some people starting to feel the weight of the world and you just want it to be better. And at the time, I'm 48. At the time, it wasn't as bad as it is now. But the feeling was, shit, I actually think the only way this is going to be fixed is if we're invaded, because then we'd be one Earth, right?
What
We
happened
wouldn't
to
have all of the.
9/11? What happened on 9/11? For a brief time, we were like one world.
When you're writing your books, it sounds like there are books that I've read within the science fiction that can give us hope. There are some that kind of are a commentary on how we are.
Hmm.
Your books, from what I've just heard, seem to be very honest about the way we are,
Yeah.
as opposed to a hopeful version of what we can be, without any spoilers about what happens. Was How did
Well,
you choose that? What was the? Because you could have gone that way, right? Where you can use prose in your book and say, if this gets into enough people's hands, maybe it's going to change minds, and maybe it can. You talked about being powerless. I think by being somebody who can pen words on a paper, that's a lot of power and influence.
yeah, absolutely. I love one of the very, I think it is the very last line in Terminator 2 when Linda Hamilton's character Sarah Connor is ruminating on the Terminator, the T-101 model that had come to protect her and her son John against the T-1000. And she said, if a Terminator can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too. And she's speculating, on the future. This is volume one. This is the very first one I wrote in the series, and it's called Reality. This is the one that's actually been adapted for the screen and is being pitched to streaming networks right now. So
Oh
I'm
yes,
super
beautiful.
stoked about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're this close, and I'm really really excited. That's the author's ultimate dream. But yes, the referendum exists on frankly, I mean it. It can dredge up a whole lot of emotions for a whole lot of people, so I don't like to mention it very often. But Rodney King, can we all get along? In
Right.
1991, can we all get along? We have to kick these guys off the planet, these aliens here. We have to kick them off the planet. And so in order to do that, you have to put aside your biases and you have to step down and you have to humble yourself and you need to rise to the occasion and we all need to do our part in order to function together cumulatively as a positive whole. Um, it doesn't always work that way.
No.
People are their own worst enemies and they get in the way. But as a pantser writer, there's a very dystopian element that takes place has its roots in this book. And so 4 chapters in, I didn't know that was going to be part of it. I didn't know the book was going to be so robust. I just I evolved my way into oh, oh, and I realized this book now just went like this, and it diverged and has two very powerful storylines running, which culminates in book three, and it's just awesome that way. But it's the dystopian element that really makes a lot of people go, I don't like that. I don't like people having power over me, and let's revolt. Whether it's aliens or humans.
What? How can you explain to somebody how you go through the process of writing something like this? Because You know, I've got three sons, and I remember when both of them used to draw a lot. You know, they're 29, 21, and 17, right? One of them's in motion design, so there's the creative element there. One of them is on his way to being a semi-professional footballer, a certain creativity there, and the other one is on his way to being a mechanical engineer. He absolutely loves cars. But I remember when they used to draw and write. I just had to have a conversation with them the other day about, hey guys, all three of you, you've got this WhatsApp group. Stop sending each other messages. Get on a video call and speak to each other, please. These
Yeah.
messages, like the worst form of communication, you seem to be unable to put prose in a place, right? They've got to do things like cover letters now, right? So they've got to get to a point of applying jobs or do personal statements. And I can feel the pain because they're not used to doing it. And
Yeah.
so it would have already been a bit of a mind gymnastics for somebody to work out. You wrote how many words and nobody forced you to do it as a part of a university degree. You just decided to write a book of that thickness and another one, another one. What is it? How does it work for somebody like you to have so much to say? What is that?
Yeah. Well, let
I
me.
think that is my question. I love books, but I'm gonna have to speak to an actual author. How does that work?
I think you have everything that we've talked about so far at play. So here's this huge desire to create. Here's this addiction. Here's this massive appeal of holding the finished work in your hands eventually and seeing it. Visualized is one thing, holding it tangibly in your hands is another. So all those things contribute to it. But this was a story I was meant to tell, just like Antonio Banderas was meant to play Zorro. I This was a story I was absolutely meant to tell, and it burst out of me like an alien queen. There I go talking about aliens again. I'm under enormous pressure as a voiceover artist with the career crumbling because of the SAG-after strike, the economy, lowballing colleagues, underbidding or lowballing clients, underbidding colleagues, and then AI on top of that is a huge destructive force on creative industries. I had to pivot. Last year I said, I'm a storyteller. I'm going to write stories. And so I hammered away every spare minute I had on these stories. And I kept trying to get away. I kept trying to get away from Dissonance to tell this.
Right.
But another installment just said, no, you have to tell me first. There's more story here. And so, man, every spare second I had in between auditions and jobs, in between being with the kids and putting them to bed and, okay, are you asleep? Okay, good. I mean, I was just, it was a huge compulsion, but a massive desire to pivot is this is how I want to provide for my family eventually. It is possible.
I've got a background in project management, and the projects I have are quite contained. They have a beginning, they have an end. I know how they're sliced up on task and the whole matrix thing. When it comes down to writing books and the way that you write them, and it's got a series, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, there's the actual thing you're doing, but there's the planning to do the thing you're doing. Can you talk to me about how the planning happens before you do the thing?
Okay, so this is where a pantser fails in the
Ah,
planning
okay.
compartment. Here's a really good example of me as a pantser planning, nonetheless. So I wrote Dissonance Volume 1, 2, and 3. That's Reality, Reckoning, and Renegade. I thought I was done. But then I realized, wait, there's 16 years that happened in between the invasion and this series of stories told in 2042. So I said, well, I'll go back and I'll write a prequel that happens in 2026 before the invasion. And that story, I had no intention of writing it. That story has the most heart. That is my favorite out of the entire series. But Jet, the protagonist of 1, 2, and 3, has all these flashbacks, has all these memories of what happened as a kid, growing up, and this and that. And so I just went, okay, I can grab all these bullet points of things he mentioned, put them in chronological order, and then I just need to flesh out narratives around them, and that will give me the prequel. It took a lot of creative um, it took a lot of creativity to flesh out narratives over around something that was one single sentence, in another book. and I did face some inertia here and there, but honestly, it was so compelling to write this backstory as a pantser. It was the most planner I ever was as a pantser. But I don't sit down and go, I'm going to go da 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 da. I just don't do that. I just start and I see where the story takes me, and that's how I've always written. That's a pantser.
What a brain. When did
I'm not sure
you
that was a compliment.
when did you it definitely was. When did you experience any kind of block within did you experience any kind of block within your writing? Was there any kind of friction within is it always it's impossible for me from my worldview, from what I've lived, to just imagine that as a pantser it just flows out of you. Did you have any moments where you hit something and it just couldn't?
Well, there are instances where you feel like you might actually break the storyline because of
Okay,
something you've made, or there's something that you wrote earlier and you've painted yourself into a corner. And so,
interesting.
how
Okay,
do I get myself out of that? And so that really takes some. You got to sit back and you got to think about possible scenarios that can actually be your escape. And there's a Russian, I think he's a novelist actually. I can never remember his name, but he said part of your job as a writer is to get your protagonist up, stuck in a tree, and then throw rocks at them. That is what you do. I mean, because the way that your protagonist finds his way out of that situation reveals a lot about your protagonist. It reveals his character, it reveals his resiliency and his ability to navigate difficult circumstances. That's what life's all about, anyway. So that's kind of what I had to do. Writer's block, I don't know that I've ever suffered from it, although I do
right.
believe in it. I just, I did have to find some moments where I'm kind of stuck for a second. How do I get out of this tree and get this guy to stop throwing rocks at me, and go back and figure my way out? So, but there was another time, I mean, the writer's block didn't strike with forecast. It's just that this story, at its initial 50 pages, was not as compelling as these 6 books were. This is where I belonged. This is really where I belonged. And I knew and loved these characters. When I finished this one, now I know and love this character in this world.
You have had. I'm understanding you've always had a vivid imagination that becomes real, right?
Yeah.
You I've got to do. I do recon. I haven't got to. I just do it. So I with the people that I interview, I do a bit of digging around them. So I know that according to Google, you are the second most important Aaron Ryan in the world.
Oh, who was the first one? I didn't even
There's
know I
an
was important.
there's an
Okay.
actor. So I typed in Aaron
Ah,
Ryan, and there's
yes.
an actor who comes up for something I've never ever heard of before. He's there, but then bam, right on after him is you, right? So that I found was interesting, but you made my recon a lot easier because on your website you have a list of 26 fun facts about you,
Yes.
and two of them stood out to me. It seems that you are a difficult to contain romantic. Like you don't even try and hide it. So fact number 5 is you set an international and illegal record for consuming the highest amount of elementary school sloppy joes during 6th grade in a desperate attempt to attract a prospective girlfriend. What? Okay, so there's a lot. My brain goes to, did it work?
No, no. Janine, my wife, my current wife, not my current wife, not like I had a past wife, but my wife is not that girl. No.
No,
I
I
think she
didn't. I
was more
didn't think.
repulsed. Huh?
But what was that about? What?
Oh, I
Why
don't
was
even
that?
know. I don't even know. Kids do stupid things. A, I liked sloppy joes. B, I was hungry. C, she was hot, if you can say that as a 6-year-old, sixth grader. And D, I was like, hey, let's try to impress her, you know. But here, I'm the guy who also tries to impress people with saying the whole Colonel Jessup speech from A Few Good Men, or the whole Fazzini, poison in the goblet speech from Princess Bride. And every time I do that, I'm like, hey, impressed, huh? And they're like, no, that's actually kind of sad, that you know that whole thing. So my ways of impressing people apparently are just destined to fall flat. I don't get it.
I
How
think
to
you're
impress
talking about.
people.
I think you're talking about impressing people, but with, if I can say, a 50% dose of seriousness. I think what I've learned about you, what I'm learning about you, actually is the responsibility is a bit is a determination to actually make people happy in some way, shape, or form. Because
Yeah,
that's definitely going to come through with your work. I mean, if you're talking about the voiceovers, I'm pretty sure that they would ask you for this and it would be enough for them, but you add a little bit more
yeah,
because you've got an idea of how it's going to be heard in the ears of people, right? And
yeah.
then I'm adding this, I'm bringing this all together because the other fun fact was number 15, which you've already talked about. You proposed to your wife in a highly dramatic and super romantic proposal, and you got an absolutely. You
I
talked
did.
about a video. What was it that actually took place? What did you do with this
Yeah.
proposal?
So it was very elaborate. So we both knew, just we had mutual acquaintances of a two-woman performing duo that would go out, and they were part of, they're a local ministry. They would go out and perform at prisons, women's prisons, and so on and so forth. I knew them from a long time ago, and their name was Drawing Water. I said I had the idea for, first of all, I wanted to recite the monologue that Jane Seymour does to Christopher Reeve in the movie Somewhere in Time. It's the most romantic movie I've ever seen, and she's on stage and she's reciting this very dreamy monologue to him out in the audience. It's where he realizes that she's fallen in love with him. So I wanted to reverse that and be the man on the stage, but doing that same speech, and she had seen it, so she's familiar with it. So I said, Drawing Water, I have an idea. I'd like to do this scene from Somewhere in Time and propose to my wife, but can we put it under the auspices of you coming to our church and putting on just a performance, like a performance night, and maybe they want a guest performance, someone from the church, so people will go, hey, Ryan, Aaron's going to be in it, and then we'll do that. We'll go through it, right? So they said, yes, sounds great. And I had to learn all kinds of other roles and other scripts to make it believable because my proposal act was in Act 3 at the end. But I had all these other things I had to do with them. They did some of their own things, many of their own things, but I did 4 or 5 other skits. So it was basically just an elaborate setup for me to be part of this. It was enjoyable. The church loved it. We loved it. But it was all an elaborate setup and build up to this finale of me proposing to Janine in the final act.
Wow.
Uh, and it was just awesome. So I created a video. I was a video producer at the time. I created a video of pictures and memories of us and me talking head, sharing about our dating life. And so she's watching that, and she said that really disarmed her. Had I just called her up, in the middle, she said she wouldn't, she didn't know if she would say yes. But watching the video, it calmed her and brought her back through this journey of our dating life, and then and prepared her emotionally. She said, but I
That's
did get an
absolutely
absolutely.
beautiful. So, how long had you been together before you proposed?
5 months.
Are you serious?
Wait a minute, January. Yeah, 5 months. Yep.
Oh, you beat me. I met my wife for the second time in April 2004
Okay.
and proposed because she's French. I was in the UK. Proposed to her in July of that year and moved to live with her in August. And, we've
Wow.
been married for 20 years.
Well, we
No,
started late.
18 years. 18 years.
Yeah, we started late. We got married in 2012, and I was 37, and she was 30 or 30. 36 or something, and she was 34. So we started very late, and we just knew we didn't want to waste any time.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. Now, another thing that I've seen and read from the information you've given me is that you guide other authors or creatives. How did that come about, and what do you do for them? How do you help them?
Well, I'm not necessarily a coach. I wouldn't say that, but I've been around the block more than once. I published, I'm working on my 23rd book,
Hey,
and
okay.
self-publishing is a beast unto itself. A lot of people they get nervous about the specter of it and what's going to be demanded of them. Why don't I just approach a traditional publisher and let them handle everything? I am a I am a creative, I am a marketer, I am an enthusiast, which is way more important than being a marketer. Just be an enthusiast. I could talk for hours about that. Um, and so I want to communicate that to people. I want to share with them these are some revolutionary ways that you can promote your book, some of which cost $0, some of which cost you no uncomfortable exposure, because some people are worried about, like, hi, I wrote a book and I would love you to take a look at it. They're really sheepish about it. But be an enthusiast, number one, because no one will be as enthusiastic about your work as you. And
Nobody
here's some
should be, right? That's exactly what I'm telling people all the time. If you don't see the value in it, why do you expect anybody else to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm not a coach in that regard, but I do talk to a lot of authors on LinkedIn in particular, and just
Did
sharing
they come
ideas
to
and
you, or
encouraging.
did you decide to actually do something to go out to them? How did it work?
I'm a networker first, so I don't say on there, established authors seeking to network with less established authors. I network with authors, and I
Nice.
tell them what I'm working on. They tell me. They find out that I'm on book number 23. They go, "Whoa." Some people are on book number 56, so they don't say "Whoa."
Right.
You get a mishmash and a hodgepodge of levels of experience and seasonedness from all these authors. But I just, where I can, I really desire to impart and encourage. That was the nature of my voiceover blog. That was the nature of my voiceover books, was just to encourage and lighten people's load. Say, you can
Absolutely
do this.
beautiful. When you started doing the writing of the books as a profession, when you got your first sale, how did that feel? And at which point did you realize, oh shit, this is a thing. This is actually happening.
That goes back to my voiceover books, because that started in 2016, I believe, or 2017, I think was when I started the first one. And it was surreal. It was someone actually parted with their hard-earned dollars for my book, some of which is already available in my blog, but they wanted the whole thing. They wanted, you judge a book by its cover. I had a I had since had a branding conflict with a client, so I couldn't use it anymore. But at the time, I had very superhero, at a logo like that, and I had a full studio portrait session of pictures of me, opening my shirt to reveal that VO logo, uh, you know, underneath a dress shirt. So I can't use that anymore, the branding conflict. But it was a silly situation. Don't ask. But I was elated. Someone actually bought my book, and they have it and they're reading it. Just what was the greatest feeling? Greatest feeling.
But then at which point did you realize it's taken off and becoming something that I can actually start basing my life on, as opposed to it's somebody else likes it, it's made a few shekels, to actually this can become a career. This could make me the bread.
Yeah, not with the voiceover books.
No,
Much smaller community, and it's business books. So I mean, yay, for a lot of people. But when I started with Dissonance Volume One Reality, that's when things
right?
really started to pick up. Much higher, much bigger audience. The breadth of appeal is huge. Granted, alien invasion is a smaller genre than if you're doing like a psychological thriller or a crime thriller or something like that. Um, I think Forecast has much more potential than Dissonance, in terms of its appeal, because it is historical fiction, deals with something very real, um, that we all relate to. We all it still resonates, to this day. Although, it's not a hexalogy. It's not a 6-book series that so people are going to read it and then one and done. Um, so, but yeah, I think just starting with Dissonance and putting those out there, such an amazing feeling to see that people are buying my books, they're reading them, they're pleased with them, they're leaving reviews. I'm so grateful, beyond
Did,
grateful.
so I've always heard about this. It's not something I've experienced, but I've always heard about this. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was the Dune books. So the Dune books are actually quite vast,
Yeah,
and they're from years ago, right?
right.
And I think I was reading that at one point the author was kind of done, but then he actually got his audience kind of berating him, like, dude, you can't stop like that. What are you doing? And he actually went back and wrote again. So, not so much of you being corralled into writing books, but do you have fans, if I can put it like that, who
Yeah.
contact you and have that kind of dialogue of you about the book? And
Yes, I do.
because
So
that fascinates me.
this is 1, 2, and 3. I thought I was done. People said, "No, you're not done. You need to write this one and then this one." And I was like, "Okay, now I'm really done. I have a trilogy and 2 prequels. I'm done." But my buddy Vance, who is the titular character in this book, said, "You've got to write a sequel because that craft is still up there." So this is the sequel that was at Vance's bidding. And this is one of my favorites now as well. So this is a powerful, very 24 Jack Bauer-esque follow-up to the Dissonance pentalogy, which makes it a hexalogy now with 6. I do have fans, and some of them are very rabid. So it's kind of like,
How did you how did you deal with, I know, how did you welcome that? And then how to eventually, because it's something that seems to be ongoing to the point they've spoken to you to the point of, okay, but how did you welcome that? And then how did it become part of your life? Because I think for me, sometimes I don't have fans or anything like that, but distraction, right? I'm
yeah,
doing this so if I'm cooking, okay, this is a good one. If I'm cooking, my family know they shouldn't come in the kitchen. It
right.
it will annoy me.
Yep,
It will annoy me. I'm preparing something for you. That whole idea of don't see the bride before the wedding and everybody's like really angry. So my thing is, I just shoot them a look and they're like, I just want to get some water. I don't care.
right.
I'm in here cooking, leave. But for you, there seems to be, and what I understand from the outside is there seems to be a responsibility because it's the audience.
Always. I genuinely feel that the story is now complete. So I thought the story was complete with the trilogy and then the 2 prequels because the first prequel ends minutes before the second prequel begins. The second prequel ends minutes right before the beginning of the trilogy begins. So it really truly did run full circle, but that did leave the door open still for just by a crack for a sequel. My friend Vance listens to all of the audiobook files. He screens them for errors for me. Just, loves the story. Listens and says, "Hey, at 13 minutes and 26 seconds, you clear your throat, or you say this twice or whatever." And that helps me put out a valuable, error-free product for the most part. I'm so grateful for him. And so I didn't feel necessary,
Oh,
but he did have a point
okay.
that at the end of the trilogy, there was room for a sequel because of one major factor, is that the alien craft was still in our mesosphere. So I was like, all right, let me explore the idea because I'm always open to a good idea for sure. Always open to
But
a good
how?
idea.
But
So
Vance is one thing. That's a friend of yours. But strangers, how did you welcome them into your life? Because
oh,
how do you know if you're being trolled or whatnot, or how did that become part of your life, part of your process?
yeah, well, I have an exclusive author Aaron Ryan group on Facebook. Anyone's welcome as long as they're not a marketer. So is it composed primarily of family and friends? Yes. But I have several readers who are in that group. I just had a Hexalogy release party, which was October 20th, I believe, and I invited not just family and friends, but local readers who I'd met. I do a lot of craft fairs and vendor markets and trade show booths where I'm sitting there at my table,
Oh,
with a display
amazing.
behind me, selling and signing books. And these people, if they love the story enough, I say sign up on the blog. If you want to join, and then from the blog, if you want to join the group, here's the link to the group. They join the group. I say, hey, we're having a readers, a Hexalogy party celebrating these books. Come, and they come,
There's a
and
lot.
I love talking to them.
There's a lot of what you talk about that for people that I have worked with, for people that I've just watched from afar, it's difficult for them to build what you have that seems so natural and so organic. It just seems so natural. Just and I think if I start applying certain jargon or technical words to it, the part where you actually are providing aftercare sales to people and making sure that they can have a conversation with you and tell you what they think and maybe take their
Yeah,
things, their information on board for the next time around.
yeah, I love that. There's nothing more rewarding as a writer than someone reading your book, except perhaps leaving a review on Amazon, please. But I love getting mail. I don't know why. I've always just loved getting mail. But when it's mail, when it's an email, excuse me, about one of my books and why'd you kill off so and so, even if it's angry, why'd you kill off
Right,
so and so?
right.
Granted, I hope to God they're not Annie Wilkes or whatever her name was from Misery.
Misery.
Um, but boy, I love they're incensed because I was
It's
incensed.
amazing.
I love they're disassembled because of that death. I was disassembled. I died a little when I killed off so and so in the writing. I died when I had to revisit it in editing. And you can hear me, I narrate all my own audiobooks. You can hear me in the audiobook bawling because I'm dying again. So I feel your pain, and I love that you've written me to express that. I
That's
love that
beautiful.
engagement, man. Hugely
So
affirming.
you've got all of these books, you've got a lot more than just the books going on. You've got a growing family, you're a husband, voiceover work. How do you find the energy?
Coffee?
It's a lot
um,
more than coffee, my man.
it's a
I'm
lot more than coffee.
guaranteed.
I just have a zest and a passion for life. I mean, the creative side,
Has it always been like this for you from
yeah.
like when you were young, just
No,
going at
it's
it?
always been that way. This guy right here, my 8-year-old, is incredibly creative. The things he can do with paper and making three-dimensional things and art and stuff, it's just like the world's not ready for you, bud. He's amazing. And so I look at me and go, well, I'm creative, but Brennan, holy cow. The guy's just going to make millions, and I'd like some of it, please. But yeah, I have such a desire to get up. I'm leg shakingly excited the night before I have to get up and go to work.
Okay.
I love being out here. I mean, this is my
It's a
fortress of
beautiful setup.
solitude.
Yeah.
This is my Superman. If I could turn the camera around, you'd see some Superman placards on the wall. This is my fortress of solitude. This is my haven of creativity out here, and I just love creating. And this is where I think a lot of people stop, and they harm themselves because of it. I am not creating. I would love this to be my livelihood. I would love it to be, what provides our more, pays for our mortgage. It's not there yet. Voiceovers are, yes, but if I can do it with voiceovers, I can do it with authoring. I can
Right.
do it, and I already know that.
Right.
But where people get stuck is, man, I've spent so much money on advertising and promotions for these books and stuff, but they're just not selling. I'm going to give up. Are
Right.
you really doing it for the commercial side of it?
Right.
Or are you doing it for the pleasure side of it? Because I have said, no one's buying this book, I'm just going to stop. But I can't stop. I have to keep writing and creating. If you don't have that fire inside you, you know, that's the difference right there.
Do you, when it comes to that fire that's burning and the propulsion that you have, the motivation you have, I can see that it definitely was you scratching your own itch, just getting it out there. At any point, did it become a quest responsibility to do things for other people. So when you're writing these books, are you trying to do things for other people, make them feel a certain way, or is it just that you're sharing with the world what makes you happy?
I think it's a hugely imbalanced equation, much more in the favor of the latter. I want to give something that inspires people. I want them to read it and receive it and be so moved and excited by it. But even if they don't, independent of accolades or affirmation or approval, any of those three, and there's a really good quote I can share for that along those lines, by the way. This has been a mantra for me. Um, Independent of all that, I still have to create and churn out stuff. It's almost like I have a compulsion to leave a legacy.
Right.
Here's the phrase.
Go.
And everything I've done in my careers, all of the careers that I've had independent of the administrative assistant and executive assistant managerial stuff, bleh, I don't want any of that. They've all been about storytelling. All of them have been about storytelling and leaving a legacy. So I am where I need to be. This phrase, though, if you don't have a mantra that you can live by and that you can survive and thrive by as an author, take this one on. And a former agent said this to me. Someone's endorsement of you, or lack thereof, has very little to do with your trajectory. I had to have her repeat that. I said, whoa, 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 say that again? And I wrote it down, and then I turned it into this plaque. You can barely see it, but
Oh,
it's right there.
wow. Okay.
I turned it into this plaque. So someone's buying your books or not, someone leaving a positive review or not, someone telling someone else about your book or not, has very little to do with your trajectory. So back to your question, them being moved or them being excited and telling people about the books and me getting reviews and all that, it's so nice when
It's
they
a
do that.
bonus.
It's bonus is the exact word, but it has very little to do with my trajectory. So you have to do it for you.
So, looking back, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself when you first started to embark on turning your creativity into a business?
Don't try to be the next. Well, as a writer, don't try to be the next Tolkien, Collins, Asimov, you know, Foster, anybody. Don't try to be any of those people. Be you. Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." If you are not unique in this market, you're just more noise. You're an imposter. You're a mimic. Be yourself, offer original material. That's what Google likes, and that's why websites shoot up because they're original, authentic content. Um, be yourself. Don't try to parrot someone else because it's already been done. The other thing, though, is that trajectory line, and I dare say I'd go into a third one. I love the line that Qui-Gon Jinn rather says to Anakin Skywalker in a movie I like to pretend does not exist, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. He says to him, "Your focus determines your reality." I love that phrase, and that is my mantra in business and life. If I could just apply it to this, my focus determines my reality, and then I'd be able to lose some weight. Um, but man, it's so true. Whatever you are so laser focused on, that determines your reality. I was so laser focused on being a successful voiceover artist. Our
I love it.
house was bought with voiceover money. Our van was bought with voiceover money. A lot of things we've bought with voiceover money. The same will be
Absolutely love it.
eventually true of authoring.
So, I've got two more questions for you. But before I get to the last question, it's time for a bonus question. So, you need to pick a number between 1 and, let me just see, 1 and 18.
1 in 18. Okay. Let's go with 7.
7. If you were to start a completely different business tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Um, I've evolved so many times. You'd think this would be like a no-brainer answer. Um, Gosh. I would think that it would have something to do with technology, quite frankly, or something that is a coaching. So either technology or a coaching business that has to do with entrepreneurship. Because I've served in so many different roles and worn so many different hats as a creative that it's really easy to draw upon all those and provide valuable feedback to those, just wading into the stream right now. Probably an emphasis on the latter, was a coach
It's
of some kind.
very, very interesting. Aaron, it's been an absolute honor speaking with you today, sir. I've
Thank
thoroughly
you for having
enjoyed.
me.
It's a massive, massive honor. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to start reading. I didn't have to speak to you first, but that's definitely. I love reading. I love books. I love sci-fi. I'm definitely get that book. I want to congratulate you again for it being
Thank you.
turned into something visual that people can watch. My household has a dad who, if a series or film comes out that is derived from a book, nobody's allowed to watch it until they read the book.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody gets locked down. Like, you're gonna have to read the book first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's rare exceptions to that when you watch like The Hunger Games. I love those
They're
movies. I
good.
love
They're
them. They are
amazing.
so good. And then you go back and you read The Hunger Games, and it really, the movies very closely mirror that
It
book,
is. It
those
is. It
books.
is true.
But I love the books. On the other hand, though, I think that, people are, honestly, I don't think I jumped the gun, but I'm really grateful and proud that I did get contract the services of a screenwriter for Dissonance Volume 1 Reality. However, I'm about to, I honestly think, do the same with Forecast because this has such emotional appeal, and this would be incredible on screen to see this undone. It would be incredible, and it would make so many people happy. I think, to not erase that day in our history, but to visualize it through a different lens of never having happened. I know it's really hard to describe the book without spoiling it entirely,
No, I
but
totally get that.
the way it manifests is something where you're going to go, "Oh my gosh, wow!" I'm just so grateful, man. They're just such great ideas, and they
Um,
came to me.
just really, really, just a massive, massive honor. So, if people want to find out more about you,
Yeah.
if they want to get your books, you talk about being self-published. Where should they go? What should they do?
So there's two different sites. One of them is authoraaronryan.com, and I always like to clarify it's not awfulaaronryan.com. It is authoraaronryan.com. Just to be clear, authoraaronryan.com. That's my whole library of books and my 26 useless facts or whatever it is. My library and videos and all of that stuff. Beautiful site I had designed, just turned out great. And then there's a site that's specifically devoted to the Dissonance sci-fi hexalogy, and
Okay.
it's dissonancetheseries.com. However, people constantly say dissidents, and so I got a different website that forwards to it. You can go to getthesebooks.com,
Are you
and
serious?
that will forward to dissonancetheseries.com.
Well done.
So authoraaronryan.com, getthesebooks.com. Those are both
Well,
the
you get the links to me. I think I've already got them. I'll put them in the notes for this episode. But Aaron, again, thank you so much for your time. It's
yeah,
been
thank you.
absolutely amazing. Really, really. Okay, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Startup Lowdown. I hope today's conversation brought you fresh insights and a new perspective on the realities of building a business. Remember, success isn't just about profit, it's about growth, both personal and professional. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider subscribing, leaving a review, a comment, and make sure you share it with everybody who might benefit from these candid stories.